Minister for the Public Service, Home Affairs, Labor and Gender Affairs, His Excellency Dr. Didicus Jules, Director General of the Organization of Eastern Caribbean States Commission, Dr. James Fletcher, Head of Soluricon and former Minister of Government in the Ministry of Public Service, Sustainable Development, Energy, Science and Technology of St. Lucia, Ms. Keithlin Caroo, Founder and Executive Director of Helen's Daughters, and awardee of IICA's Goodwill Ambassador, Dr. Manuel Otero, Director General of the Inter-American Institute for Cooperation and Agriculture, IICA, Mr. Lloyd Day, Deputy Director General of IICA, all distinguished participants and special invited guests, especially the family members of Ms. Caroo, fellow colleagues of IICA, a pleasant good morning. Bonjour, buenos dias, and good afternoon and good evening to all. It is my pleasure to welcome everyone joining us from near and far in this virtual award ceremony of IICA's Goodwill Ambassador in honor of Ms. Keithlin Caroo. My name is Beverly Best, and I am the Director of External and Institutional Relations at IICA. I am your moderator for today's event, which I consider to be a privilege with such a distinguished and august body. Today, however, IICA turns a spotlight on Ms. Keithlin Caroo, Founder and Executive Director of Helen's Daughter, which undoubtedly is a trailblazing agricultural non-profit organization of St. Lucia, and one of the recipients of this year's award of the Most Excellent Order of the British Empire, which is the third highest ranking order of the British Empire for humanitarian services. This ceremony is a special event as it highlights the phenomenal work of Ms. Caroo, which targets rural women, girls, and youth in the agricultural sector. Might I add that from IICA's perspective, the work that Ms. Caroo has undertaken and continues to undertake qualifies her as an avant-garde par excellence of young agripreneurs, not only of St. Lucia and of the OECS, but also the entire Caribbean region and beyond. In fact, her commitment to improving the lives of smallholder rural women farmers by positioning them to be key actors in driving sustainable development in the Caribbean region is what distinguishes her and inspired our institute to confer the IICA Goodwill Ambassador Award to Ms. Keithlin Caroo. She is the first Caribbean national and the first youth to receive this award. Today's ceremony could not be more timely, as it is another bold step and testimony of this institute in demonstrating its commitment to champion and support the soul of rurality and leaders of today, not of tomorrow, but of today. These are women and youth. It was just last Friday, October 15th, that IICA joined the rest of the world in celebrating Rural Women's Day with various activities held through the recently launched Hemispheric Platform for Rural Women. Today, therefore, we wish to continue along those lines of raising awareness of the aims, objectives, and priorities of this institute and its effort to enhance its technical cooperation agenda through close collaboration and association with the short but most distinguished track record of Ms. Keithlin Caroo and her organization, Helen's Daughter. To contextualize the significance of today's award ceremony, I will take a few minutes to share with you some brief information on IICA's Goodwill Ambassador Program. The IICA Goodwill Ambassador Program is designed so that the Institute can join forces with individuals whose reputation and influence transcend national and continental boundaries and are globally renowned. Moreover, the selected person acts as an advocate and champion of IICA in promoting its mandate globally and in engendering widespread appeal to raise the profile of the agricultural sector and rural development, and ultimately contribute to making a difference in the lives of farmers and people in rural communities. With these brief introductory remarks, it is now opportune for me to call on the head of IICA, Dr. Manuel Otero, Director General, who will share on the significance of today's award ceremony and its relevance in supporting the vision of IICA as it carries out its mandate in support of transforming the region's agri-food systems to one that is more resilient, sustainable, equitable, affordable, and inclusive. Ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, I now call on Dr. Manuel Otero to address you.
Thank you, Beverly. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. Honorable Philippe Pierre, Prime Minister, Minister for Finance, Economic Development and the Youth Economy. Honorable Alfred Prosper, Minister of Agriculture, Fisheries, Food Security, and Rural Development. Permit me once again extend congratulations to you, Honorable Minister, on assuming this most important ministerial portfolio of agriculture, fisheries, food security, and rural development. It is indeed a pleasure to meet you, and I look forward to meeting you in person and to working closely to you as you lead the agriculture sector in St. Lucia. Honorable Dr. Virginia Albert Poyot, Minister for the Public Service, Home Affairs, Labor and Gender Affairs, and Parliamentary Representative for the constituency of Bobonu. His Excellency and friend, Dr. Didacus Jules, Director General of the Organization of Eastern Caribbean States. Dr. James Fletcher, Head of Soloricon and former Minister of Government in the Ministry of Public Service, Sustainable Development, Energy, Science, and Technology of St. Lucia. Ms. Keithlin Caroo, Founder and Executive Director of Helen's Daughters, and Awadi, IICA Goodwill Ambassador. Mr. Barrymore Felicien, Permanent Secretary, Ministry of Agriculture, Fisheries, Food Security, and Rural Development. Ms. Soraya Niels Regis, Deputy Permanent Secretary, Ministry of Agriculture, Fisheries, Food Security, and Rural Development. Mr. Lloyd Day, Deputy Director General for IICA. Ms. Beverly Best, Director of External Affairs and Institutional Matters of IICA. Mr. Greg Rollins, IICA Rep in the Eastern Caribbean States, distinguished guests, and especially invited dignitaries. On behalf of the Inter-American Institute for Cooperation on Agriculture, IICA, it gives me great pleasure to welcome and extend warm greetings to everyone who has joined us for this virtual ceremony to confer the title of Goodwill Ambassador on Ms. Keithlin Caroo, Founder and Executive Director of Helen's Daughters. I wish to thank you all for your presence. The ceremony is indeed a very special one, as it represents the first time that the person from the Caribbean region is being conferred with the title of IICA Goodwill Ambassador. Interestingly, Ms. Caroo, who will assume the title of IICA Goodwill Ambassador, is a national of St. Lucia, small country that can boast of having produced two Nobel laureates in Sir William Arthur Lewis and Sir Derek Walcott. St. Lucia is once again, therefore, at the forefront of having its outstanding sons and daughters recognized for their contributions. As was mentioned by our moderator, the IICA Goodwill Ambassador Program was created to forge new partnerships, build bridges, attract new stakeholders, and highlight the critical role of agriculture and rural development in the Americas. IICA's Goodwill Ambassadors have a shared commitment to human development and to the search for equality and equity for all people. They have an interest in contributing and sharing their talents in their respective areas of specialization and are open to implementing actions to articulate a sustainable development agenda. The Institute confers individuals with the title of Goodwill Ambassador based on their personal merits, on their identification with a particular social cause, and or because of their social commitment or willingness to participate in activities that are relevant to the Institute's mission. Ms. Keithlin Caroo, founder and executive director of Helen Daughters, a grassroots nonprofit organization, has demonstrated her commitment to uplifting rural women by providing training, mentorship, and support for the marketing of their agri-food products through e-commerce and other means. Her innovative approaches to contributing to economic empowerment and sustainable livelihoods among rural stakeholders, including women and youth, have been recognized nationally, regionally, and internationally. Ms. Caroo's work is aligned closely with the mission of IICA, and we therefore consider her to be most worthy of being conferred with the title of IICA Goodwill Ambassador. The activities undertaken by Helen's daughters are indeed closely aligned with those of the IICA delegation in St. Lucia, the OECS, and the wider Caribbean. For instance, we target and have provided capacity building and mentorship support to the same key beneficiaries, which include members of the St. Lucia network of rural women producers. As a consequence, there is a solid platform for a strengthened collaboration between the delegation and Helen's daughters. In my capacity as Director General, I wish to thank Ms. Caroo for her willingness to serve as an IICA Goodwill Ambassador. We remain committed to working closely with you and Helen's daughters towards the implementation of actions of mutual interest and which will contribute to agriculture and rural well-being in St. Lucia, the Eastern Caribbean states, the wider Caribbean, and the hemisphere. The Institute's delegation in St. Lucia will be actively involved in driving such initiatives in close collaboration with you. As we pursue initiatives with the new Goodwill Ambassador, we look forward to the continued strong partnership with the government of St. Lucia through the Ministry of Agriculture, Fisheries, Food Security, and Rural Development, and other key ministries, as well as with other stakeholders in St. Lucia and the wider region. I thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Otero, for those remarks, which outline the foundation for IICA's vision in conferring the honorary institutional title of Goodwill Ambassador to Ms. Keithlin Caroo, as well as the vision for partnering with our partners or various associates in St. Lucia and the wider Caribbean. Thank you, Gigi. In tracing the trajectory of Keithlin's career, there are various persons who advise, support, and provide strong mentorship as she continues along her professional development. One such person who stands out as a mentor, a friend, and as an inspiration to Ms. Caroo is Dr. James Fletcher. Dr. Fletcher is known for wearing many hats in his professional career at the national, regional, and global level. However, on the eve of the upcoming COP26 meeting, it is most fitting for me to introduce him as the former Minister of Government in the Ministry of Public Service, Sustainable Development, Energy, Science, and Technology of St. Lucia. Reason being, when he was that minister, or when he performed that role, he stood at the forefront and successfully led the charge for small island developing states across the globe and negotiated the Paris Agreement towards limiting global warming to well below 2 degrees Celsius under the mantra of 1.5 to stay alive. So Dr. Fletcher, I now invite you to share some remarks at today's event held in honor of Ms. Keithlin Caroo. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Prime Minister of St. Lucia, the Honorable Philip J. Pierre, Director General of IICA, Dr. Manuel Otero, Ministers, Excellencies, distinguished invited guests, Ms. Keithlin Caroo and family, ladies and gentlemen. I'm honored to have been invited by IICA's Goodwill Ambassador designate, Ms. Keithlin Caroo, to speak on her behalf at today's ceremony. Keithlin Caroo is an extraordinary St. Lucian, During the period I've known her, Keithlin has managed to continuously amaze me with her passion, her focus, and her commitment to a very important issue that surprisingly often flies below the radar of most governments, and that is the critical role of women in rural development. Keithlin Caroo already has a very remarkable resume under her belt. However, you must forgive me for being biased when I say that the most impressive element of Keithlin's resume is the initiative she has devoted her time and attention to over the last 5 years. In 2016, Keithlin Caroo responded to a call for proposals from the UN Women's Empower Women Champions for Change program by designing and submitting a project that sought to provide support to rural women with the use of adaptive agriculture technologies, capacity building, and improved market access. Those of you who are familiar with the agriculture sector in St. Lucia would know that official census data have traditionally painted a picture of this sector as being dominated by middle-aged men with relatively little use of technology and plagued by problems related to weak market intelligence, inconsistent institutional support, limited availability of affordable credit, and a persistent threat of extreme weather events. Consequently, the programmatic and policy interventions that have been undertaken in the sector have primarily looked to address these problems from the perspectives of the male farmer. What the agricultural censuses do not reveal, however, is the critical and pivotal role that women have played and continue to play in the agriculture sector in our country. Women are involved in all segments of the agriculture value chain, from farm to table. But their presence is even more pronounced at the value-added ends in packaging, processing, marketing, and selling. Keithlin Caroo recognized this glaring deficiency and decided to respond with positive action via a nonprofit organization that she founded called Helen's Daughters. This is where my fascination with Keithlin's work started. I was amazed that someone who did not appear to come from a farming background had such a keen insight into the unique challenges that confront rural women in our country. However, during the discussion with Keithlin's father a few months ago, I got a better appreciation of the genesis of her understanding of the nuances of the agriculture sector. This put things into perspective for me because I must admit to being baffled at how Keithlin had come to understand the sector so well when most of her adult life had been spent not on a farm, but studying and working outside of St. Lucia. Helen's Daughters seeks to marry the traditional and the modern in our agriculture and use information and communication technologies to create more opportunities for rural women in learning, capacity building, market access, and partnership building. The Rural Women's Academy, and that's AGCADEMY, is an innovation of Helen's Daughters that uses a blended learning approach to educate and empower previously marginalized rural women in entrepreneurship, marketing, adaptive technologies, and by creating working partnerships, particularly with the tourism and hospitality sector. I had the privilege of delivering the feature address at this year's graduation ceremony of the Rural Women's Academy, and I was impressed with the passion, the enthusiasm, and the commitment displayed by the graduates. I was equally impressed with the curriculum that was followed during the training program. The mission on which Keithlin Caroo has embarked is timely and critical. Over the last 3 decades, our countries in the Eastern Caribbean have had to endure the loss of preferential treatment and access for our banana and sugar industries. This has had serious repercussions for our rural and national economies. The livelihoods that depended on agriculture were upended, and without much institutional support for skills retooling, rural citizens who previously made their living in the agriculture sector had to migrate to the cities to try to find work. This changed the socioeconomic landscape in all our countries, and our rural communities are no longer the thriving, energized spaces they once were. This is inimical to the sustainable development of our country, and Keithlin Caroo and Helen's Daughters are responding to this. If I were to give a speech in the lead up to COP26 and not mention climate change, I think most people who know me would be shocked. I do not intend to shock you today. Climate change, through its myriad impacts on small island developing states, or SIDS as we call them, will threaten our food security and our water security. Keithlin Caroo has understood this and has made climate smart agriculture a pillar of the work of Helen's Daughters. Civil society organizations have a critical role to play in helping us to develop resilience to the impacts of climate change at the household and community levels. And this makes Keithlin's work even more important. Finally, I do not know how many of you have noticed, but St. Lucia is currently experiencing a shortage of some food products because of the impacts of Hurricane Elsa and the disruption of global supply chains caused by the international response to the COVID-19 pandemic. Food security will become an even bigger and greater concern in the coming weeks and months. Governments and development partners like IICA do not grow crops. They do not own fishing vessels that go out to sea, and they do not process food. However, what they are expected to do is create the enabling environment through technical support, capacity building, legislation, incentives, risk mitigation mechanisms, access to credit, and strategic partnerships that will make it easier for Keithlin Caroo and Helen's daughters to succeed. So my parting plea to you, after celebrating with Keithlin Caroo this most deserved award of IICA Goodwill Ambassador for Sustainable Development Issues, is to follow this up with tangible and sustained institutional support that Keithlin will need to make this noble mission of hers a success for our rural women, our nation, and our region. Keithlin, congratulations. Keep up the great work. I expect even bigger and better things from you, and I know you will not disappoint. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Fletcher, for sharing some of the unique insights on the pioneering work of Ms. Caroo, especially over the past 5 years, in terms of the Rural Women's Academy, her initiatives in climate smart agriculture, to name a few. So thanks again, Dr. Fletcher, for those inspiring words. Ms. Caroo is currently working towards replicating her work with Helen's daughters in neighboring Caribbean islands that are experiencing similar problems, but have similar opportunities as those of St. Lucia. This reality provides a suitable segue for me to now invite someone who is instrumental in leading and accelerating the regional integration agenda in the OECS region and by extension, the wider Caribbean. Ladies and gentlemen, it gives me great pleasure to now invite Dr. Didicus Jules, Director General of the OECS Commission, to give some remarks at this event. Dr. Jules.
Thank you, Ms. Best. Prime Minister, the Honorable Philip J. Pierre, Honorary Ms. Keithlin Caroo, and founder of Helen's Daughters, Director General, IICA, Dr. Manuel Otero, Minister of Agriculture, Fisheries, Food Security, and Rural Development, the Honorable Alfred Prosper, Minister for the Public Service, Home Affairs, Labor and Gender, Honorable Virginia Albert Poyot, Head of Soloricon, Dr. James Fletcher, Director of External and Institutional Relations, Ms. Bess, IICA Representative in the Eastern Caribbean, Mr. Greg Rollins, distinguished development partners, public servants, friends, members of the media. The OECS is very pleased to be associated with the conferring of the distinguished award of IICA Goodwill Ambassador on Ms. Keithlin Caroo today, because in so doing, IICA is signaling its recognition that the future of agriculture in the Eastern Caribbean must be young, collaborative, entrepreneurial, and innovative. It is still a too slowly changing fact that the average age of farmers in the OECS ranges between 55 to 65 years. It is a demographic and socioeconomic fact that any occupation whose age profile corresponds to this age is an occupation in decline, unless there's an infusion of youth for its sustainability. And this is not simply an age question. It ultimately translates into the inherent capacity in a sector for its revitalization, its enthusiasm for the adoption of new technologies, its thirst for modernization, and its risk appetite. At no time in our contemporary history has agriculture resumed such strategic and urgent importance. Agriculture has always been a central pillar of all human civilization, but somewhere in our Caribbean journey, undoubtedly a legacy of exploitation and imperial ambition, it was presented in a unidimensional perspective, all about export trade and low-value labor. The concurrence of crises that now assail us necessitates that we look beyond this blinkered vision and recognize its central role in our civilization and the protection of our sovereignty. And this is what brings us to the appreciation of agriculture as the guarantee of food security, the assurer of nutritional status of the nation, the source of niche export opportunity, and new avenues of value-added production. These are the considerations that makes today's event highly symbolic for all who have struggled and are still struggling to redefine agriculture as a career of noble provision and entrepreneurial possibility. Ms. Caroo was an early beneficiary from 2010 to 2013 of a collaboration agreement between the OECS and the government of Puerto Rico that allowed students from the OECS to enroll at universities in Puerto Rico in studies ranging from associate to doctoral degrees. In fact, I believe Ms. Caroo did agricultural science from what I have been told. And in the curious conspiracy of history and fate, our mistress of ceremonies, Ms. Best, was the then officer of the OECS who led the opening of this door of opportunity. So we are happy, Beverly, that you are here today to open further doors of opportunity to one like Keithlin, who has so clearly demonstrated how opportunity can be leveraged for higher trajectory. Congratulations, Keithlin, and thank you, Dr. Otero and IICA, for this gesture of affirmation. I thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Jules, for your remarks, which underscore the complementarity between the vision of the OECS Commission, the work of Ms. Caroo, in advancing the agricultural sector, not only among women, but among youth in our region. And indeed, it is, I would say, a rare coincidence, and I will speak to you about this coincidence offline, but it's really a great pleasure for me to be here at this ceremony on behalf of Keithlin. I would like to just borrow a phrase you made, which is agriculture is a central pillar of civilization, and that rings true then, and it is so much more eloquent and necessary for today's event as we face the future. So I thank you again for those words. So we move right along. Unfortunately, the Minister Poyot, is unable to be with us today. There's an emergency that cropped up. So we'll move right along to the Honorable Minister for Agriculture. Now, just to introduce the recent discussions for the UN Food Systems Summit, the Caribbean Week of Agriculture, and the Committee for World Food Security, among others, have all shown that now more than ever, innovative and transformative actions are required to address specific challenges and opportunities in our food systems if we are to achieve the 2030 Sustainable Development Goals and beyond. At this juncture, ladies and gentlemen, I am really pleased to welcome the Honorable Alfred Prosper, Minister of Agriculture, Fisheries, Food Security, and Rural Development of St. Lucia, to share his vision for improving the agricultural sector through, among other things, collaboration with grassroots entities such as Helen's daughter. Minister Prosper.
Thank you, Chair. Honorable Prime Minister Philippe J. Pierre, Minister for Finance, Economic Development, and the Youth Economy. Dr. Manuel Otero, Director General of the Inter-American Institute for Cooperation and Agriculture. Dr. James Fletcher, Head of Solar Recon. Dr. Didigus Jules, Director General, Organization of Eastern Caribbean States Commission. Mr. Greg Rollins, IICA representative in the Eastern Caribbean. Ms. Keithlin Caroo, founder and executive director of Helen's Daughters. Mr. Dr. Manuel Otero, IICA Goodwill ambassador. Mr. Barrymore Félicien, permanent secretary in the Ministry of Agriculture. Mr. Ryan Niles Regis, deputy permanent secretary in the Ministry of Agriculture. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. It is indeed a distinct honor and privilege for me to attend this virtual award ceremony, which is being held to confer the title of IICA Goodwill Ambassador to Ms. Keithlin Caroo, founder and executive director of Helen's Daughters. I therefore wish to thank the Director General of IICA, Dr. Manuel Otero, for the kind invitation to participate and make remarks on this very special occasion. Ms. Caroo, today's featured awardee, is a perfect example of the light that the people of St. Lucia are able to broadcast to the world. I have no doubt that our founding fathers envisaged this future for the people of St. Lucia when they so passionately encoded into our coat of arms, the land, the people, the light. In Helen's Daughters, Ms. Caroo has created a dynamic resource for increasing the avenues for formal and enhanced participation of women in the agricultural value chain. Helen's Daughters works at the grassroots level to build capacity, train, mentor, and support rural women farmers in accessing high-value markets for the products, thus contributing to economic empowerment and sustainable livelihoods in rural communities. As I understand it, this approach has produced valuable partnerships locally with the St. Lucia network of rural women producers, Massey Stores St. Lucia, the St. Lucia Hospitality and Tourism Association, the British High Commission, and scores of farmers, agro-processors, entrepreneurs, and support actors. This model for social entrepreneurship empowers all involved to be change makers, to catalyze actions and valorize the opportunities that our people and country have to offer. Ms. Caroo, you are the first Caribbean national to be awarded the distinguished title of IICA Goodwill Ambassador, joining the fraternity of Nobel laureate, former President, Emeritus Professor, international entrepreneur, and development experts. IICA's foresight in bringing together those exemplary representatives of the various fields is praiseworthy in and of itself. But to us, member states and partners, it represents a resource to augment and complement our own commitment to human development, inclusivity, and equity in the development outlook for agriculture. I consider the experiences, modalities, strategies, and methods of work of such goodwill ambassadors in the agricultural sector to be most instructive as we seek to achieve critical outcomes such as strengthening capacity of our youth, women and men farmers in the business of farming, expanded and inclusive value chain participation, higher earnings, and greater economic and social empowerment. The government of the St. Lucia Labour Party has entrusted me to define the path by which St. Lucia has access to enough food that is affordable, safe, healthy, and that meets the nutritional needs of citizens and is produced in an environmentally safe way. Essential to being able to define and then walk that path is our partnership with organizations like IICA and Helen's Daughters, and leveraging the added value that may be born from our closer cooperation. In that regard, I am committed to meeting with Helen's Daughters and IICA to specify initiatives to the benefit of our women farmers, agro-processors, and other entrepreneurs in the agri-food sector. I wish Ms. Caroo continued success in her efforts to uplift rural women in particular, and sincerely hope that your example will inspire other young persons to pursue noble and constructive approaches to the development of our people. To have been a part of this ceremony to award Ms. Caroo is an auspicious honor, and I once again thank IICA's Director General, Dr. Manuel Otero, for the opportunity to offer these remarks. Thank you.
Heartfelt thanks goes out to you, Minister, for your insights and visionary ideas for improvement in the agricultural sector of St. Lucia. Thanks again. Though it is only a few months in your new position, IICA remains committed and looks forward to your partnership and to seek to embrace those ideas put forward for collaborating with Helen's Daughters, as well as your own ministry and government to strengthen the agricultural sector in St. Lucia. Thanks again, Minister. I think everyone will agree that the presence of the Honorable Philip J. Pierre, Prime Minister, Minister for Finance, Economic Development, and the Youth Economy at this event is symbolic of its importance to St. Lucia and the rest of the Caribbean. Moreover, having the designation of Youth Economy as part of his responsibility provides a perfect correlation for me to invite the Honorable Prime Minister to address this august body on the occasion of the conferment of the title of Goodwill Ambassador to Ms. Keithlin Caroo. Honorable Prime Minister, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ceremonies. Let me recognize the Director General of IICA, other members of the head table, and other speakers who came before me, and pay a special tribute to, can I call Ms. Caroo Ambassador Caroo? Is that keeping with the protocol? Can I say Ambassador Caroo? Can I?
Yes, you can.
I can. Let me especially acknowledge Ambassador Keithlin Caroo. After the speeches that came before me, there's little more I want to say, but just to congratulate Ms. Caroo on that achievement and thank IICA for the work that they are doing in the agriculture sector in St. Lucia. Any initiative in agriculture now is worthwhile because we are faced with a situation that's both man-made and circumstances that are beyond our control. First of all, I think I heard Dr. Fletcher say it quite clearly, because of the effects of climate change, particularly the effects of Hurricane Elsa, our agricultural produce and agricultural industry is under threat, both as an external and to be used internally. So we are under threat as far as that's concerned. Secondly, we have supply chain issues. Because of the effects of COVID, there are issues in transporting agricultural produce from one area to the other. And thirdly, because of the emerging industries, the new industries, young people in particular seem to be leaving agriculture and seeking other avenues of employment. So our agricultural industry is under threat. And an organization like Helen's Daughters, by its very name and its very leadership, is a welcome change in the agricultural industry. For young people, and particularly young women like Ambassador Caroo, to be able to put together synergies so that we can have an organization like Helen's Daughters is really admirable. And the government of St. Lucia will do whatever we can do, as I heard my minister say, to encourage that kind of development and to create an expansion of Helen's Daughters so that the country can benefit. I want to tell you that as far as I see it, agriculture is important, not only for food security, but as a means of improving lives and livelihoods. Many of our illnesses are lifestyle illnesses. And by eating properly and eating healthy foods, particularly eating what we grow, we can solve or we can mitigate against many of the lifestyle diseases that we have. So agriculture is very important from many aspects. And I'm pleased when I see young people are willing and able to come forward and raise their hands and come away from the traditional modes of employment for young people and get involved in novel and new ways of employment and new ways of job creation and new ways of sustainability. I want to really congratulate Ms. Caroo and thank IICA for recognizing such a talent. I heard my minister say that he's willing to meet with Miss Caroo and move forward. I hope that someday I'll have the privilege of speaking to her and hearing more of her ideas, and so that we can work together to make Helen's daughters more of a reality than it really is. Because it almost sounds like a dream for a young woman who I understand has a background in political science and international relations. I'm very happy she has, for the time being, forgotten the political science part of it. So I'm very happy that she has taken that plunge and making such a meaningful contribution to our country and to our organization. I want to congratulate you, and I want to thank IICA, and I want to wish you all the best. Thank you very much.
Thank you again, Honorable Prime Minister, for taking time from your extremely busy schedule to be with us and to join us in the celebration of this significant milestone in Ms. Caroo's career, as she transcends to being a strong advocate for women and youth in agriculture for the region. Thank you again, Prime Minister. Despite being founded a little over 5 years by Ms. Caroo, Helen's daughter has received several prestigious awards and has been recognized as an agricultural revolution. I actually saw that on the net. The impact on rural women and the contribution to improving their lives and livelihoods, as well as to change the mindset among young people, especially young girls, are noteworthy. To sum this up aptly, I will paraphrase an African proverb here. If you empower a woman, you empower a family, and you also empower a community. And perhaps you can go on and say a country, but I wouldn't go that far. But today we are therefore deeply honored that you, Ms. Caroo, have accepted the title of IICA's Goodwill Ambassador, which is the Institute's highest award. And we feel truly privileged to be associated with your outstanding achievements. Ladies and gentlemen, I now invite Dr. Manuel Otero to confer the title of IICA Goodwill Ambassador to Ms. Keithlin Caroo. So I now ask Ms. Caroo, virtually, now this is now a novel thing, to receive this award from our Director General, and the inscription reads, Ms. Keithlin Caroo, IICA Goodwill Ambassador for Sustainable Development Issues, in recognition of her contribution to capacity development training and empowerment of rural women farmers. I now invite all of you to join our Director General as he grants this certificate of award to Ms. Keithlin Caroo and to congratulate her for this stellar achievement. Congratulations. So Ms. Keithlin Caroo, on behalf of all of us at IICA and all the participants here, your family as well, we are indeed privileged and pleased to have you address us today. Please join me in welcoming Ms. Caroo to give some remarks on your occasion. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Best. Honorable Philip J. Pierre, Prime Minister, Minister for Finance, Economic Development, and the Youth Economy. Honorable Dr. Virginia Albert Poyot, Minister for the Public Service, Home Affairs, Labor, and Gender Affairs. Honorable Alfred P. Prosper, Minister of Agriculture, Fisheries, Food Security, and Rural Development. His Excellency Dr. Didicus Jules, Director General, Organization of Eastern Caribbean States Commission. Dr. Manuel Otero, Director General of the Inter-American Institute for Cooperation on Agriculture. Ms. Beverly Best, Director of External and Institutional Relations of the Inter-American Institute for Cooperation on Agriculture. Mr. Greg Rollins, IICA representative in the Eastern Caribbean. Dr. James Fletcher, Head of Solar Icon, former Minister of Government in the Ministry of Public Service, Sustainable Development, Energy, Science, and Technology. Distinguished guests, friends, and family, I must say, this is still very surreal to me. I think I'm still pinching myself. because a mere 9 months ago, I took a decision that would radically change my life. A decision that I think kept my parents up at night for many months and perhaps made my friends and colleagues believe that I might have lost my sanity. You see, earlier this year, I left a job that wasn't just a job that provided financial stability and a dream job, as some would say. It provided social validation. You see, a girl like me from an obscure town called Foaso Babono, which oftentimes my friends referred to as behind God's back, you didn't leave a job at the United Nations, much less a job that kept you in close proximity for what some may consider an act to the axis of power, the office of the President of the General Assembly. What about all those years my parents and grandparents toiled? All those years carrying bananas for you to leave a job at the UN and go back into agriculture? It made no sense. On top of that, I didn't perhaps have the right last name, the right address, or the right social status, because at times in St. Lucia, these things mattered. For a very long time, where I came from was supposed to determine where I was going. And being a grandchild of banana farmers and from Foaso meant that I wasn't meant to go that far. This is why today, on the heels of World Food Day and the International Day of Rural Women, I stand on the shoulders of my ancestors, proud of where I am from, and even prouder that I chose to come back. As mentioned earlier, on January 17, 2021, after 5 years at the UN Secretariat, I left my appointment in the office of the President of the General Assembly to focus full-time on a little-known NGO called Helen's Daughters, a love child that was birthed almost 5 years ago in 2016, in what I would call a stroke of divinity and perhaps some luck, when a proposal that I had pitched to UN Women's Empower Women Champions for Change program, yes, it's quite a mouthful, the proposal was chosen. A proposal that highlighted that women in agriculture in St. Lucia were oftentimes undervalued and overlooked because of traditional perceptions that held that they were not producers, but only hucksters or middlemen or middle women, dare I say, buying and reselling the produce of male farmers, often leaving women at the very base of the agricultural value chain, which in many ways led to a lack of support in training, finance, and capacity development. But really, Helen's Daughters started much earlier than that. It started when I discovered my mother's certificates on the eve of my grandmother's death, and noticed that in the space for profession, when my grandmother stated that she was a housewife, while my grandfather stated that he was a farmer. And it was much further from the truth. My grandmother was the pillar of our family. In essence, our foundation. She fed not only her children, but her grandchildren and many adopted children off of the earnings of agriculture. Like many persons wanted to believe, my grandmother was also a market vendor, but more so, she had 3 times the job. She grew the produce, sold the produce, and on top of that, took care of an entire family. And Helen's Daughters is in a sense a homage to her. When I started Helen's Daughters, it was seen as a noble pastime, a hobby even. Empowering rural women, how nice, how sweet. But what we don't understand in St. Lucia, in the region, and the world at large is that the seeds of empowerment in agriculture have the ability to allow undervalued farmers and farmers to get a renewed invigoration in the sector. It allowed, from what I've seen, it allowed battered women to find a freedom from their partners through the farms. And it allowed youth like myself to hold their heads up high when choosing to become a farmer. Let's face it, the training programs are plentiful. The technology exists in agriculture. But what are we really doing to make the agricultural sector attractive to women and youth? Agriculture is in need of a major rebranding. And while we blame youth for their lack of interest in the sector, we have not been able to support or showcase successful farmers and farmers But we continue to expect the youth to enter a sector fraught with instability, a negative perception, and an overall lack of support. Furthermore, agriculture is at the forefront today, particularly in the COVID-19 pandemic. Dare I say, agriculture and food security is, in a sense, almost a solution to COVID-19 in a region fraught with non-communicable diseases, fraught with persons that are already sick from hypertension, high blood pressure, obesity, diabetes, and the list goes on. And the reasons our numbers are growing because of COVID-19 is not only because of the pandemic, but because our people are already sick. The CARICOM food import bill alone stands at $8 billion. What are we currently doing to change that with the aging farming sector? This is why, in essence, we started Helen's Daughters. Again, it wasn't only about providing empowerment, but about providing the appropriate capacity development and a support network that would lead and guide women into the agricultural sector. When we first started, all our support came from outside of the region, unfortunately. We started with the University of British Columbia, where we paired engineering and biological students with farmers in St. Lucia to create a sustainable farm design. From there, we grew our Rural Women's Academy, which has been a flagship training program that focuses not only on sustainable agriculture and climate resilience, but also about agribusiness development. Because at the end of the day, agriculture is not only about production, it's a business as well. And I'm glad to say that in St. Lucia, for the last 3 years, we have trained over 300 rural women, not only in sustainable agriculture, but in building their ag business. And starting in 2021, this notes the second week that we have partnered with the University of the West Indies and the Food for Change program. And we have rolled out a program in St. Vincent and the Grenadines and St. Kitts and Nevis, which has currently trained 359 registered participants, again, in sustainable agriculture and agribusiness development. Clearly, there is a need for agricultural education and a support network. I mean, I am an example of this. I grew up in a household with farmers on both sides, and I never took a formal agricultural education class until the age of 25. So that says a lot. And that is a reality that needs to change, not only here in St. Lucia, but throughout our region. Helen's Daughters and this conferment of the title of IICA Goodwill Ambassador, I cannot take and accept this alone. This is part of a support network. I may be a token, but I am backed by many, 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 many persons. Obviously, I would need to thank my parents first and foremost, Caroline Caroo and Terence Keith Caroo, for their continuous support and their cheerleading. My grandparents for instilling the seeds of agriculture and empowerment in me. My executive board, from Johan to Kimani to Katie to Stacy to Uranus and Tasha, and the list goes on. To Mr. Dunstan DeMille at Massey, to Dr. James Fletcher, and the number of sponsors, including the British High Commission, alias Fossels, the Women's Voice and Leadership Equality Fund, and so on. As the youngest and first Afro-Caribbean person to receive this title, I would like to not only be the voice of the youth and women in the agricultural sector in our region, but also to humanize policymakers, to allow our policymakers to see that agriculture should be people-centered and to connect that bridge. So today I thank you again, IICA, for this conferment and for the support.
Thank you very much, Keithlin. Until the lion or the lioness tells their own story, the history of the hunt will always glorify the hunter, an adaptation of an African proverb. Your parents, and I'm sure your grandparents, especially your grandmother, will be very proud of you today for telling that story. Merci, gracias, obrigada. Thank you so much again, Keithlin, for accepting the award of IICA Goodwill Ambassador, and for sharing those invaluable insights with us. Thanks again. Before we come into the end of today's ceremony, but before I close, I will call on my colleague, Mr. Greg Rollins, our IICA representative in the Eastern Caribbean, to give the closing remarks. Mr. Rollins.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Best, Director of External Institutional Relations. Permit me to recognize the Honorable Philip J. Pierre, Prime Minister and Minister for Finance, Economic Development and Youth Economy, the Honorable Alfred Prosper, the Minister of Agriculture, Fisheries, Food Security and Rural Development, Dr. Virginia Albert Poyot, the Minister for the Public Service, Home Affairs, Labor and Gender Affairs, Dr. Manuel Otero, Director General of IICA, His Excellency Dr. Lucas Jules, the Director General of the OECF, IICA Ambassador, Goodwill Ambassador, Ms. Keithlin Caroo, and Founder and Executive Director of Helen's Daughters, other IICA colleagues, specially invited guests, members of the media, persons joining us on various social media platforms. A pleasant good afternoon to all. It is indeed a pleasure for me to bring brief closing remarks on this special occasion. And I wish to start by joining others in extending heartfelt congratulations and best wishes to Ms. Keithlin Caroo, our IICA Goodwill Ambassador for Sustainable Development Issues. I also wish to pledge the full support of the IICA delegation in St. Lucia and the other Eastern Caribbean states to you, Ms. Caroo, as you assume this important role. And you can please feel free to engage us and call on us for any assistance you will require. I also want to thank you for having accepted the award and for your remarks, which indeed would have enlightened us on the importance of making agriculture more attractive to young people, which is something that we need to definitely focus on as we move forward. We've been very fortunate today to have several very prominent speakers join us, and I wish to take this opportunity to thank them for their participation and remarks. First, I wish to thank the Honorable Philip J. Pierre, Prime Minister and Minister of Finance, Economic Development and Youth Economy, for gracing us with his presence and for his encouraging and uplifting remarks, emphasizing the importance of agriculture and food security and good nutrition. As indicated by the moderator, the presence of the Prime Minister here today demonstrates the importance that the government of St. Lucia attaches not only to this ceremony, but also to the noble work being done by Ms. Caroo and Helen's Daughters. I also wish to thank the Honorable Alfred Prosper, Minister of Agriculture, Fisheries, Food Security and Rural Development, for his remarks and for his invitation to engage with Helen's Daughters and with IICA to explore how we could support the participation and engagement of women in agriculture here in St. Lucia. Minister, as you're well aware, we share much in common in terms of the areas of focus that are necessary to develop the agriculture sector here in St. Lucia. And we look forward to your continued cooperation and engagement with you and your team in the Ministry of Agriculture. Today's ceremony, while focused on St. Lucia, is of great relevance to the entire OECS sub-region. And we are therefore extremely grateful to His Excellency Dr. Lucas Jules, Director General of the OECS, for sharing his thoughts with us on this occasion. Once again, we recognize the important partnership between the OECS and IICA, and we look forward to continued close collaboration in working with civil society organizations such as Helen Daughters and others as we seek to build the agricultural sector as a foundation, as a pillar for the development of the OECS economies. We are also very pleased to have had Dr. James Fletcher, former minister, with us for the ceremony. Dr. Fletcher, a champion for sustainable development and climate change action, is uniquely positioned as a close associate of both IICA and Helen's Daughters. And we want to thank Dr. Fletcher once again for his remarks and for being here to speak on behalf of Ms. Caroo. I wish to thank our Director General, Dr. Manuel Otero, not only for the institutional greeting which placed today's event in proper perspective, but more so for his visionary leadership, which led to the creation of the IICA Goodwill Ambassador Program. Director General, you continue to inspire and challenge us to be innovative and creative and work towards establishing meaningful and impactful partnerships, such as those being created through the IICA Goodwill Program. And we thank you. I also wish to place on record special mention and thanks to Ms. Beverly Best, the Director of External Institutional Relations, and the team in the directorate for her directorate for leading and coordinating the planning of today's ceremony, and for the very efficient manner in which the event was moderated. Thanks also to the team of the IICA Social Communications Unit and the IICA delegation in St. Lucia for this support and assistance. I wish to take this opportunity to thank everyone who in any way made this ceremony a success, and to also thank all of you who joined us on the various social media platforms. And we do sincerely hope that you enjoyed this virtual ceremony and found it both informative and inspiring. Thank you very much. Have a pleasant good afternoon, everyone. Back to you, Ms. Bess.
Thank you very, very much, Greg, for those closing remarks. Thank you so much for joining us and for working closely with us in ensuring that today's event was a success. Thanks again to all. And in the spirit of Creole Month, Creole Heritage Month, IICA joins in saying to all our friends in St. Lucia and the other Francophone countries in the Caribbean, Bonne fête Creole à toutes. Gracias.